ကျမ်းမာတော်မူပါသားခင်ဗျာကျွန်တော်ဒီနေ့တွေ့ဆုံမေးမြန်းသွားမှာကတော့ Michael Haack ပါ Michael ကဒီမြန်မာပြည်နဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့ Advocacy Coalition ကိုစလုပ်ခဲ့တာ2002ခုနှစ်မှာစလုပ်ပါတယ်အခုဆိုရင်တော့သူကဒီမြန်မာ Policy Institute မှာလုပ်ပါတယ်ဒီ Burma Act လို့ခေါ်တဲ့မြန်မာပြည်နဲ့ပတ်သက်တဲ့ဥပဒေပါလာတဲ့အခု NDA မှာပါလာတဲ့ဥပဒေနဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့ဒီဥပဒေပြဋ္ဌာန်းမှုဖြစ်အောင်စ조사ခဲ့တဲ့အထဲမှာပါဝင်တဲ့သူတစ်ယောက်ဖြစ်ပါတယ်ခင်ဗျာ Good afternoon Michael you were involved in lobbying Burma Act
yes.
So what made you to involve in the Burma Act and what are the goals of the Burma Act?
Definitely, yeah. So I guess I'll start with what made me involved. I had been involved in congressional advocacy around Burma from the early 2000s until, around 2010 when things started to open up. I didn't expect to go back to Burma advocacy, but then the coup happened, and a lot of old friends, just started contacting me, like, okay, how do we contact our members of Congress? How do we do this and that? And so, I just started working on it, and it basically, took over about 2 years of my life, advocating for the Burma Act. The Burma Act itself is a number of different laws that had been proposed in the past that were put together and then finally passed. There was a Burma Act that existed before the coup. That Burma Act meant to limit the amount of money that the Tatmadaw could get and expand humanitarian aid, but that was around the question of the Rohingya crisis. After the coup, people took that law and they took a few other laws, some about political prisoners and things like that, and they put them together and rewrote them and reintroduced it into the Congress. And the purpose was generally to push the federal government of the United States to do more to limit the amount of cash that gets to the regime and to increase spending on both humanitarian aid and democracy aid. I believe the US policy toward Burma is mostly good, but the problem is simply political will and lack of kind of pressure on the federal government, on the State Department, on the different federal agencies to do more. And what the Burma Act really does more than anything is it provides that pressure. And I've absolutely seen that work since it passed. Like I can go to the different sort of pieces of Congress, and the appropriators who are in charge of spending money, they're feeling all this pressure from the Burma Act, and they're feeling pressure from the people who wrote the Burma Act to actually appropriate more. The State Department, who's in charge of making sure foreign policy works, they're feeling all this pressure. USAID, like all the different agencies are now feeling a lot of pressure, which was the goal of the Burma Act. So you can look at the Burma Act, you can look at the letter and what it says, and that all is very important. But the most important thing is it's about political will, attention, and this will absolutely increase the amount of attention.
Okay, and so you have said about the goals and why do you think it is important to achieve the goals?
Yeah.
What is the impact on the Burma Saffron Revolution?
Sure. Well, it will have some impact. I mean, I don't think it's going to be, the key piece, right? Of course, what happens on the ground is what matters more than anything. But this does do a few things. One, it keeps US policy focused on Burma. The democracy movement, the EAOs, the whole kind of CDM, like all of these different groups are named in the Burma Act, and it encourages US officials to work with them. I think it will have that impact that the US will be more likely and more engaged in working with all these groups. It will certainly help with more humanitarian aid. I think the humanitarian aid aspect is probably will be the most expansive part of it. I think it also makes a difference in that a lot of INGOs, maybe they were worried about working with EROs and things like that in the past, this Burma Act shows that the US government is okay with that. And so I think that means that many other actors will feel more comfortable. And so it's hard to point to just one direct impact. I mean, I wish I could tell you, okay, yeah, we passed this Burma Act, now everything is like, but unfortunately it's just one step in a long process of engaging the US government around the Spring Revolution, but a very important step. And so, yeah, I think people should keep their eyes on it.
There are also some criticisms on
Yeah.
the Burma Act, and they say that it won't change and there will not be a major policy change of the U.S. on Burma.
Yeah.
Now, what is your response?
Well, it depends what you mean by major. I mean, again, like some people look at the letter of the law and they say like, okay, this is what the law says and that's what's important about it, which I do agree that is important, but I think sometimes those people are missing the bigger picture in my view, which is that this is the Congress telling the State Department and other federal agencies to do more. And you might say, well, why would they listen? Congress controls the money for this is like the way the US government is set up, right? So like if Congress tells the State Department to do something, State Department starts kind of sweating, they're like, oh my gosh, we better do this or we're gonna lose our funding, and so it is very important actually when you understand the way that the government like actually works, which is really like, it's about power and it's about pressure and who's pressuring who to do what. The Congress pressuring State Department to do more is a big deal. US policy toward Burma has always been very driven by Congress, partly because it's a moralistic question, right? Like the US has always been involved in Burma from a point of view of wanting to promote democracy or, end the genocide or address the genocide, things like that. And so those are moralistic questions, right? The State Department, they're about like day-to-day, everyday things. The Congress, it's about like passion and like people's ideas and morals and things like that. And so even though we might not always agree with their morals, it's still like a moral position in a way, right? I often disagree with their morals, but nevertheless, it's the part of the US government that can kind of say, no, we believe in democracy, no, we're against genocide, no, we think the totalitarianism should end or whatever. So it's very important when you look at how the US government actually functions, I think. Yeah.
The U.S. government recently put the money and the $50 million
Right.
for the humanitarian aid.
Yeah.
Is this linked to the Burma Act?
So I can't say that it's directly linked to the Burma Act, but I can say it's happening among a time of increased pressure for USAID to do more. So it may well have been. I think that in the next few months, we're going to see much more direct things where we can say, okay, that happened because of the Burma Act. But you're never going to get a clear line. Like even when you ask the question, like, how did the Burma Act pass? In my view, in what it seemed to be, like having worked on this like nonstop, when the Baptist Church in America got involved, it got a number of different Republicans to turn around on it and then focus on it. Why is that? Because Republicans need Baptists to win elections. It's about power politics. Other people said it was different reasons, but that seemed clear to me. So that I don't know if there's ever going to be like an exact like, okay, this is exactly and we can beyond a reasonable doubt we can say why this has happened or what role this pressure did play on U.S. policy toward Burma. But I could almost guarantee you 1 year from now, we're going to be saying, okay, the U.S. is doing a lot more than we expect than they were a year ago. So I think, that will be the proof.
I think the activists lobby to pass the Burma Act in 2022 and 1 year before.
Yeah, 2021.
But it was failed, right? It was not passed.
So the Congress works in 2-year cycles. So the Burma Act was drafted in the beginning of the coup happened like in the very first month of the last Congress. And then it took the entire 2-year cycle basically to pass it. So it never failed. It just took a very long time to pass.
Okay, this question is for ordinary Burmese people. And
yeah.
if they ask, what can we expect from Burma Act?
Yeah.
What sort of aid would come to Burma?
Yeah. So again, like, and I wish I could say, like, okay, this means like we're getting X, Y, and Z. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. I do think it means like things like food aid and all kinds of different things are going to increase. I think it does mean some aid to EROs and EAOs will happen. I mean, it's non-lethal. I don't think the U.S. agencies really want to touch anything that have to do with armed conflict in Myanmar. But you know, things like kind of like programmatic support, which means like training people how to do sort of bureaucracy things, or maybe even funding certain bureaucratic things. I think actually there could be a pretty good big expanse in the media that the U.S. supports, VOA but all the many different kinds of media. I think that you know, refugee aid will go up. I think that it also, there's a diplomatic aspect of the Burma Act. More pressure on ASEAN countries, which may happen above the, you know, in view of the world. It may happen behind the closed doors. I mean, even increased pressure on India. I mean, I've had some meetings about that. So all of that's happening under the auspices of the Burma Act, because the Burma Act has gotten more people talking, and it's gotten more people with power pushing other people to do stuff. So yeah, I wish I could say, okay, this means you're going to get this many bowls of rice or something like that. Unfortunately, it's really not that straightforward. It's just one kind of policy tool. Yeah.
When it's come to humanitarian aid, and I believe that mostly EAO and for IDP, cross-border humanitarian aid is really needed, and it is essential. So how can the Burma Act push that to happen in a cross-border aid? But because the neighboring country are somehow, and they don't want to lose face with the Burmese hunter.
Right.
So is that feasible to happen cross-border humanitarian aid?
Yeah, I think absolutely. So I think that is one of the strong parts of the Burma Act, is that it does push for that. The U.S. has a history of doing cross-border aid with Thailand. I expect that will increase. I don't necessarily think it will be in very sensitive areas, but I do think like the humanitarian aid aspect of that. You know, other countries, it's a different conversation. The U.S. is engaged with Bangladesh around this issue. To the extent to which there will be cross-border aid, I'm not certain about that. There's already a lot going through Mizoram state in India, but it's not the U.S. government. It's a lot of the Chin diaspora that are funding that. I think there's possibilities for that to expand. I don't know. I can't guarantee it will. But it's absolutely something people are focused on. And I think that when I'm in Washington and talk to different groups, like that always comes up. And so I would expect an increase in that.
Okay, there's a Burma Act, and there's money, and the budget for, and also the assistance.
Right.
And on the side of the Burmese organization, and the Burmese organizations, what should they prepare and to become an efficient and
Yeah, so if I was writing a grant right now, what I would do is I would read the Burma Act, and I would look at the things that it says it either says the U.S. government has to do or U.S. government should do. And I would put that in your application. You know, I would say, look, this is like how we want you to implement the Burma Act. Because honestly, like a lot of people thought the Burma Act would not pass. I could go into why, but it was basically because of one senator who disagreed with all the other senators. Eventually, we got that one senator to change his mind, and it did pass. But because nobody thought it was going to pass, like the State Department and all the different federal agencies were not prepared. And so now that it passed, they're sort of panicking. They're like, oh shit, now we have to listen to the Burma Act. And they're trying to figure out, like, what does that mean? How do we listen? And so there is a real role for organizations on the ground to say, like, oh, this is how you should listen, you know, because the State Department is literally looking for ways to now report back to Congress and say, look, we're following the Burma Act. We did this, this, and that. So if you think you're doing something that the Burma Act could cover, and you know, do your best to get in touch with some kind of like, U.S. government institution, like, does that mean like it's absolutely going to happen? No, but it just means that there's a new window of opportunity for this kind of work.
Okay, so with regards to the Burma Act and what do you want to say more on that
Yeah. I would just say that the U.S. has an important role to play in this conflict, in this revolution, really, and the U.S. Congress has always been out in front on this kind of work. I hope and I think the U.S. will, in the future, do more to kind of focus on ASEAN and Burma advocacy around that, and I think the movement, also needs to do its best to focus on Indonesia and the other countries in the region. So I'll be thinking a bit about that. But, back in Washington, and if you're in the United States, I mean, really, like, they're just saying all politics is local. Like, people, again, we passed the Burma Act because, the old-fashioned politics. Like, the senators were afraid about the people who voted for them and them getting angry at them. And so, if you're anywhere in the States, you have friends in the States, like, doesn't matter if you have good English, bad English, doesn't matter if you're a refugee or a full citizen or whatever, just, send them a letter, say, like, thank you for the Burma Act, we hope that Burma gets more aid, like, this is a forgotten crisis. If you go to a church in Burma and it has a relationship with a church in the US, like, get that church in the US to say something. I mean, that really does make a big difference. And I know the US policy, it's not the only important thing, right? But it's the part that I'm involved in, so it's what I know the most about. And so, yeah, I mean, it's funny because some people have very high hopes for the Burma Act, and as you said, some people have very low hopes. I'm in the middle. It's got its good aspects, and it's definitely going to make a difference. And the more noise that people make in the U.S., like, the better. So, yeah, I would just say that.
Thank you, Michael.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the time.